She'd been standing near the garden wall, just fixing her backpack, when Karen, our angry HOA president in her bright red dress, stormed toward her shouting about breaking rules again. My daughter tried to explain, but Karen didn't listen. She grabbed a heavy pillar decoration from the yard and swung it toward her in anger. The pillar hit the ground beside my daughter, pieces flying everywhere. One piece struck her head, and she fell with a cry, holding her forehead as tears filled her eyes. Karen stood over her, yelling, "This is what happens when kids don't follow my rules." I stepped out of my car just in time to see my daughter hurt and terrified. Karen didn't know one thing. The girl she just injured was the police chief's daughter. Before you hear what happened next, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more real HOA stories where justice always wins. I heard the crash before I even heard my daughter scream, and in 1 second, the quiet afternoon turned into panic. I had been inside the house unpacking groceries, thinking everything outside was peaceful, calm, and normal. But that sound, sharp, heavy, and sudden, felt like something had hit the ground hard enough to shake the whole front yard. My heart jumped instantly, and I ran toward the door without thinking. Even before I stepped outside, I already feared what I would find. As soon as I reached the porch, I saw my daughter kneeling near the garden wall. Her hands were pressed against her forehead, her shoulders trembling, her breath broken and uneven. Tears slid down her cheeks, catching the sunlight as they fell. Around her feet were scattered chunks of a shattered concrete pillar, pieces of stone broken into uneven fragments across the grass. And then I saw Karen. She stood over my daughter like a judge delivering punishment, wearing her usual bright red dress, one hand on her hip, the other pointing accusingly at a terrified child. Her face wasn't worried or shocked. It was angry, furious even, as if my daughter had done something unspeakable by simply standing near the wall. Her eyes narrowed with irritation, not concern. "You see what happens?" Karen yelled, her voice echoing sharply down the street. "This is what kids get when they don't follow my rules." My daughter sniffled, her small voice cracking. I didn't touch anything. I was just waiting." But Karen did not care. She never cared about explanations. She cared only about control. She leaned closer, glaring as if my daughter were a criminal instead of a frightened child holding her head in pain. "You always break rules," Karen shouted. "You are leaning on the HOA property. Kids here need to learn respect." I watched my daughter shrink back, trying desperately not to cry louder. She wasn't loud, she wasn't disrespectful, she was scared, and the way she held her head made my stomach twist. Something had hit her, hard enough to hurt her, hard enough to make her fall. Karen turned angrily toward the broken pillar pieces. "That thing is expensive. Who's going to pay for it now?" "Certainly not you." My daughter looked up weakly. "I didn't touch it, I swear." Karen interrupted her with a sharp gesture. "Liar." That was it. That single word snapped something inside me. I stepped off the porch with steady but fast steps, each one fueled by anger that grew hotter the closer I got. Karen heard my footsteps and turned around slowly, irritation spreading across her face when she realized I had heard everything. "Oh, great," she said, rolling her eyes. "Here comes Daddy to complain." I didn't answer her. I went straight to my daughter first, kneeling beside her gently. "Sweetheart, look at me," I whispered, brushing her hair back from her forehead. She winced from the touch. A small bump was already forming beneath her hairline. My chest tightened. I helped her lean against me, keeping her steady while she tried to breathe. "She hurt herself because she doesn't listen," Karen snapped. "I told her not to stand here." I finally looked up at Karen, my voice low but sharp. "What exactly did she do?" "She leaned on the decorative pillar," Karen said confidently, folding her arms. "So I pulled it away from the wall to show her not to touch it. It slipped. Not my fault." I stared at the shattered concrete pieces. "You pulled it away? A heavy concrete pillar? Next to a child?" "Yes," Karen shouted. "And she shouldn't have been near it in the first place." "And you think that excuses this?" Karen scoffed loudly. "She'll be fine. Kids heal. But maybe this will teach her not to break HOA rules." I stood up slowly, placing myself between Karen and my daughter. "You don't get to decide what my daughter learns," I said quietly. "You don't get to scare her. You don't get to yell at her. And you absolutely don't get to throw heavy objects near her." Karen stepped forward, chin raised defiantly. I am the HOA president. I make the rules here. If your daughter cannot follow them, she will suffer the consequences. I took a breath, slow, deep, steady. You think you have authority? I asked. I know I do, Karen said proudly. No one in this neighborhood can go against me. My daughter gripped my arm, still crying softly. Karen didn't know. Not yet. She didn't know she was yelling at the wrong child. She didn't know she had crossed the worst possible line. She didn't know who I was. But she was about to. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my badge, and held it up so the sunlight hit the gold surface. Karen's expression collapsed instantly. Her mouth opened, her eyes widened, her bravado melted away like ice in fire. You're, she whispered. Yes, I said. I'm the police chief. Karen stumbled backward as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. I didn't know. I didn't mean. It shouldn't matter who she is, I said. But since you need to hear it clearly. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. The child you shouted at, the child you frightened, the child you nearly injured, is my daughter. Karen froze completely, and in that frozen silence she finally understood. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. But today, Karen's excuses wouldn't save her. The moment those words left my mouth, the entire mood around us shifted. The air felt heavier, as though even the wind paused to listen. My daughter clung to my sleeve, still shaking, and Karen's face twisted with a mix of anger and disbelief, like she wasn't used to someone standing up to her so directly. She planted her hands firmly on her hips. You act like I'm the villain here, she said sharply. I'm the only one keeping this neighborhood from falling apart. You're hurting people, I replied calmly. That's not keeping anything together. Karen huffed loudly, taking a step closer, trying to tower over me like she towered over everyone else. You parents let your kids run wild, she snapped. And then you blame me when things go wrong. I'm tired of it. My daughter was standing in her own yard, I said. That's not running wild. She was near HOA property, Karen insisted, pointing toward the broken pillar. That makes it my business. I looked at the pile of shattered pieces, the fragments scattered like bones on the grass. Karen, I said slowly, that pillar didn't break itself. Karen crossed her arms and lifted her chin. I moved it to show her not to lean on it. She was ignoring me. Kids these days have no manners. You picked up a heavy concrete decoration, I said, and dropped it right beside her. It slipped, she shouted. Accidents happen. Accidents don't happen when you're calm, I said. You were angry. You acted without thinking. Karen threw her hand dramatically through the air. You weren't even here. You don't know what she was doing. I know my daughter, I said, and I know you. This isn't the first time you've yelled at kids. Karen scoffed. Someone has to. Otherwise, this neighborhood becomes chaos. I stepped closer, my voice steady, controlled. No, Karen. Yelling at children doesn't make you a leader. It makes you a bully. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, a small sound came from behind me. Dad. My head hurts, my daughter whispered. Her voice was soft, fragile, as if the words themselves took effort. I turned quickly and crouched beside her again. I know, sweetheart. I know. I'm here. I checked the bump on her forehead with gentle fingers. She winced, and her eyes watered again. I felt anger burn through me. Not the explosive kind, but the sharp kind that stays low and controlled. I stood up again, slowly this time. Karen watched me with a nervous twitch in her eyes. What are you doing now? She asked. I'm taking care of my daughter, I said, and I'm holding you responsible. Karen laughed stiffly. What are you going to do? Give me another warning letter? Complain to the HOA board? They all listen to me. That's the problem, I replied. They listen to you because you scare them. Karen's face hardened. I don't scare people. I enforce rules. No, I said. You use rules as weapons. There's a difference. She rolled her eyes again, but there was a flicker of unease beneath her expression. You're so dramatic, she muttered. She barely even got hurt. Kids fall all the time. Not because adults drop heavy objects next to their heads, I replied. Karen shrugged, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Fine, maybe things got a little heated, but she needed a reminder. My daughter's eyes widened, and she whispered, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Karen snapped. Oh, stop, your little act won't work on me. I stepped between them instantly, blocking Karen's view of her. "You don't talk to her anymore," I said firmly. "You don't look at her, and you stay where you are." Karen let out a harsh laugh. "Oh, really? You think you can order me around? Do you know who I am?" "Yes," I said. "You're the HOA president. That title has gone to your head." "It gives me authority," she barked. "It doesn't give you the right to hurt someone," I said. Karen opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. "Enough," I said. She stopped. For the first time since I had walked outside, Karen went silent, completely silent. That alone surprised her. She wasn't used to being told she had said enough. She wasn't used to someone pushing back with calm firmness instead of fear. She glared at me, but something in her expression finally cracked. "Why are you acting like this?" she demanded. "She's just a kid. She'll get over it. She's my kid," I said, "and she doesn't have to get over your behavior." Karen blinked rapidly. "Why are you treating me like some criminal?" "Because what you did was reckless," I said, "and you don't get to walk away from it this time." I reached into my pocket. Karen watched my hand closely, her brows furrowing as if she thought I was pulling out another complaint form or HOA notice to fight with. But when the badge came out, everything changed. Her body stiffened, her eyes widened, her breath caught. The golden surface glinted in the sunlight. "You," she stuttered. You're with the police?" I held the badge steady. "I'm not just with them." I took one step forward. "I'm the police chief." Karen stepped back so quickly that her heel nearly slipped on the broken concrete pieces. Her face went pale, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely frightened. I didn't know. I wouldn't have," she whispered. "That's the problem," I said. "You only change your behavior when you think someone is important." Karen opened her mouth to make another excuse, but the words didn't come. Her hands trembled, her voice shook. The power she thought she had over everyone vanished in seconds. She had spent years acting like she controlled the neighborhood. But today, she finally learned she didn't control me, she didn't control my daughter, she didn't control justice, and she didn't control what was coming next. The moment I said those words, Karen's entire reaction changed. Her shoulders stiffened, her hands twitched awkwardly at her sides, and the confident glare she always wore slipped like a mask falling off. The neighbors surrounding us watched quietly, their eyes shifting between her and me, unsure whether to step closer or stay back. It felt like the entire street was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Karen tried forcing a laugh, but it came out shaky and thin. "You're overreacting," she said, lifting her chin. "I never meant to hurt her." The pillar slipped. "It wasn't my fault." "That's what witnesses are for," I replied calmly. A neighbor stepped forward. "Mr. Lawson," a gentle older man who rarely spoke during HOA meetings. "I was watering my plants," he said. "I saw the whole thing. She picked up that pillar and jerked it off the ground. It didn't slip. She yanked it in anger." More whispers filled the air. Another neighbor added, "She screamed at the girl first. The child was just standing there." Karen spun toward them. "You people are lying. You've always wanted to take me down. You're jealous I run the HOA." "No one is jealous," Mrs. Green replied softly. "We're tired, that's all." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "Tired? Tired of what?" "I keep this neighborhood perfect. You keep us scared," one neighbor muttered. Karen heard it. She blinked rapidly as if the words physically struck her. Her voice lowered, but the anger stayed sharp. "I don't scare people. I set rules because none of you know how to behave." "You hit a pillar near a child's head," I said. "That's not behavior. That's recklessness." Karen rubbed her forehead, pacing a short step back. No, this is blown out of proportion. She shouldn't have been near the wall. She shouldn't have leaned on my property." "It's not your property," another neighbor reminded her. "It belongs to the community." "Exactly," Karen snapped. "And I represent the community." "You represent the HOA, not the law," I said. Karen's voice cracked. Well, maybe if people respected me, none of this would be happening." "You don't earn respect by yelling at children," I replied. My daughter sniffed behind me, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. When Karen saw it, something inside her hardened again. "Oh, stop the crying," Karen muttered. She's exaggerating. Kids cry over nothing. I took a step forward. She's hurt. Karen rolled her eyes. A bump on the head is not a crisis. She'll forget it by tomorrow. That's for doctors to decide, I said. Karen was losing ground quickly, and she knew it. Her eyes darted around like she was searching for someone, anyone, who might take her side. But the neighbors stood still, their silence saying more than words ever could. They weren't scared of her anymore. Then someone else stepped forward. It was Mrs. Patel holding her toddler's hand. She yelled at my son last week for playing with a toy car on the sidewalk, she said. He was 2 years old. She made him cry for 20 minutes. Another neighbor chimed in. She fined me for having the wrong color mailbox. I didn't even know there was a required color. And she told my teen daughter she looked messy when she was walking to school, someone added. Karen shook her head wildly. You're twisting everything. I'm trying to maintain standards. You all should be thanking me. We'd thank you if you acted kindly, a voice said from the back. But you treat people like they're beneath you. Karen pressed both hands to her temples, as if trying to control the chaos spiraling around her. This is unbelievable. I work so hard. I sacrifice so much. And this is how you people repay me? You're not being attacked, I said. You're being held accountable. Karen looked up at me sharply. Accountable? For what? Discipline? Order? I made this neighborhood beautiful. At the cost of everyone's peace, I said. She took a long, shaky breath. This is all her fault, she pointed at my daughter. If she hadn't... Don't finish that sentence, I said. Karen's hand dropped to her side. I didn't know she was your daughter, she whispered again. It shouldn't matter, I replied. A flash of fear crossed her face. So what? What now? What happens to me? You answer for what you did, I said. To the police, to the community, to my daughter. Karen sank onto the garden edge, her posture deflated. I tried so hard, she whispered. I wanted people to follow rules. That's all I ever wanted. I shook my head. Rules don't work when you don't treat people with respect. You didn't guide the neighborhood. You controlled it. Karen stared at the broken pillar pieces as if seeing them for the first time. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, she said. I lost control. More than once, I replied. For a moment, the entire neighborhood stayed silent. Only the rustling leaves broke the stillness. Then my daughter tugged my sleeve gently. Dad, can we go home? She whispered. Soon, I told her. I just need to finish this. Karen looked up with trembling eyes. I don't want to go to jail. I'm not here to scare you, I said. I'm here to protect people. And today, that includes you learning boundaries. Off in the distance, faint sirens grew louder as a patrol car approached. Neighbors stepped aside as the vehicle pulled up near the sidewalk. The flashing lights reflected across Karen's pale face. She whispered, I didn't think this could happen to me. Power without responsibility always ends this way, I said. Karen swallowed hard. What's going to happen now? You'll talk to the officers, I said, and from now on the neighborhood will decide how it wants to be treated. She nodded slowly, almost mechanically, as the patrol car stopped and the doors opened. Her reign of fear was over, and the neighborhood finally began to breathe. The patrol car rolled slowly to a stop at the edge of the sidewalk. Its lights spun silently, washing the houses in red and blue glows that reflected off windows and frightened birds from the nearby trees. People gathered closer, but not enough to crowd. They stood in tight knots of neighbors, whispering carefully, watching every movement as if witnessing an event they had sensed was coming for years. Karen stood rigid near the broken pillar fragments, her breath unsteady, her fingers trembling so visibly she had to clasp her hands together to hide the shaking. She tried to keep her chin lifted, trying desperately to hang on to the authority she once believed she owned. But the fear still flickered through her eyes every time another neighbor moved closer. Officer Daniels stepped out first. His boots hit the pavement with calm authority, and he immediately scanned the scene, my daughter leaning gently against me, the shattered concrete pieces scattered in the grass, and Karen staring at the ground like she wanted to disappear. Another officer, Sergeant Hall, followed, standing a few feet behind Daniels with a notebook ready. Chief, Daniels said, acknowledging me with a quick nod. We came as fast as we could. What's going on? I kept my voice steady. Karen removed a heavy decorative pillar while yelling at my daughter. When she dropped it, debris struck her in the head. Daniel's brows lowered. He turned toward Karen, who raised a hand timidly as if trying to defend herself. It slipped, Karen said, voice cracking slightly. She shouldn't have been touching things, a neighbor called out from the small crowd. She wasn't touching anything. She was just standing there, another neighbor added. Karen was angry. She jerked the pillar away on purpose. Daniels looked at the growing line of people stepping forward. I see, Karen snapped. You're all lying. You've never liked me. You want me gone because you can't follow rules. I stepped forward calmly. No one is lying, Karen. They're finally telling the truth. Karen's breathing grew faster. You can't all turn against me. Without me, this neighborhood will fall apart. Daniels cleared his throat. Ma'am, we need you to stay calm. We're going to take statements. I don't need statements, Karen yelled. I need people to listen to me. I'm the HOA president. And this situation isn't about HOA rules, Daniels replied. It's about safety. Karen shook her head fiercely, her hair bouncing with each movement. You don't understand. These people need structure. Kids need to fear consequences. You nearly hurt a child, Daniels said bluntly. That's not structure. That's a problem. Karen's face dropped as if the words physically struck her. I didn't mean to hurt her, she whispered. I just wanted her to stop ignoring me. She always ignores me. They all ignore me. A neighbor spoke from behind the cluster of people. That's because you yell at everyone, Karen. And because you scare kids, another said. And because you fine people for ridiculous things, someone else added. Karen spun around, staring at the neighbors with disbelief etched across her face. I scared kids? I gave fines to maintain standards. You people are so ungrateful. But their expressions weren't angry. They were tired. Tired of fear. Tired of shouting. Tired of the authority she pushed onto them. Sergeant Hall stepped forward now. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Please stay still. Karen took a stumbling step back. No. I'm not answering anything until someone acknowledges I didn't do this on purpose. She was the one who... She's a child, I said, voice calm but firm. And you're an adult who made a dangerous choice. Karen's eyes darted toward me. You're twisting everything. I was doing my job. Your job isn't to scare people, I said. Your job isn't to intimidate children. Your job is to help the community, not harm it. Karen looked around, desperately seeking support, but every face she turned to avoided her gaze. No one stepped closer. No one defended her. The crowd carried a collective silence that told her everything she refused to hear for years. They didn't trust her anymore. Daniel spoke again. Chief, do you want to give your statement now or at the station? I'll give it later, I said. I need to take my daughter home. Karen's eyes widened. You're not pressing charges, are you? Not against me. Karen, I said softly, my daughter is hurt. There will be consequences. Karen shook her head frantically. I didn't mean for this to happen. I worked so hard to run this place. I kept everything in order. I tried to make people behave. You crossed the line, I replied, and crossing it has a price. Her eyes filled with something unfamiliar, fear. Daniel stepped toward her as more neighbors added pieces to the story. She yelled at my grandson. She fined my husband for parking wrong. She told my daughter she wasn't presentable. She turned every small thing into a war. Karen pressed her palm to her forehead as if she could physically push the noise away. Stop. Stop talking about me like that. She looked overwhelmed, surrounded by the truth she had avoided for years. Daniels gently placed his hand near her elbow. Ma'am, please come with us. We're taking you in for questioning, Karen whispered. I never wanted it to end this way. It didn't have to, I said. She looked at my daughter one last time, who stood holding an ice pack to her forehead, staring back not with anger but sadness, and Karen's face tightened with guilt. And then she walked toward the patrol car, her footsteps slow, defeated, and heavy with the weight of everything she had ignored until now. As the officers guided her in, the neighbors remained quiet. Not triumphant, not mocking, just relieved. And for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood finally felt safe again. The officers returned after speaking with every witness, the weight of the neighborhood's statement settling heavily in the air. Officer Daniels walked back toward Karen with a firm, steady expression, the kind law enforcement uses when the decision is final and non-negotiable. Sergeant Hall followed behind him, pen tucked into the notebook he had filled with details, every word from every neighbor, every observation, every confirmation of what Karen had done. Karen stood rigid, clutching her hands together like she hoped squeezing them tight enough would keep the situation from collapsing. But no amount of wishing or denial could undo the truth surrounding her now. The broken pillar, the cries of my daughter, the crowd of neighbors who had finally found their voices. "Ma'am," Daniel said carefully, "we have multiple consistent reports. We need you to come with us so we can proceed with the investigation." Karen jerked back as if he had slapped her. "No. No, absolutely not. You've misunderstood everything. I didn't hurt anyone. You can explain your side at the station," Daniel said, still calm. Karen shook her head so fast her hair whipped across her face. "No, you don't get it. I'm the HOA president. I keep this place running. I can't just leave. There's too much I manage." "That position doesn't grant immunity," Hall replied. Karen took a step back. "You can't arrest me for an accident. It wasn't my fault the pillar fell. These people just hate me because they don't like rules." From the crowd, someone said quietly, "We don't hate rules. We hate how you treat people." Karen froze for a second. Her eyes swept the neighborhood. Faces she had judged for years, families she had scolded, children she had frightened, and not a single person stepped forward to defend her. My daughter pressed closer to me, holding her ice pack carefully. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Her presence alone told the story. Daniels motioned gently. "Ma'am, please move toward the vehicle." Karen pointed toward the neighbors, desperate. "You're all ungrateful, every one of you. Without me, this neighborhood would fall apart. I set standards. I maintained beauty." One neighbor replied softly, "You maintained control." "That's different." Karen's eyes widened, almost like the words physically knocked the wind out of her. You all think I'm the problem?" Silence answered her. For years, Karen had spoken over everyone. Now her words disappeared into the quiet she created. Hall reached forward, not roughly, but firmly enough to guide her. "Ma'am, let's go." Karen pulled her arm away. "No, I'm not going anywhere until someone tells me why I'm being treated like a criminal." I stepped forward, but not aggressively. "You dropped a concrete pillar next to a child. You frightened her. You caused a head injury. That's why." Karen blinked rapidly, her breath quickening. "I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted her to listen to me. No one ever listens to me." One of the neighbors said gently, "We would have listened if you were kind." Karen turned toward her sharply. "I was kind. I organized events. I made newsletters. I tried to keep everything looking good." "You yelled at us," someone else said. "You fined us for harmless things. You threatened people," another added. "You scared my kids," said one parent quietly. Karen staggered slightly, her shoulders falling. No, that's not how it was. I was helping." Daniel stepped closer again. "We aren't judging why you acted the way you did. We're addressing the harm that was caused." Karen's voice trembled. "I didn't mean to hurt her. She was still hurt," I said softly. "Intent doesn't erase impact." My daughter lifted her eyes at that moment, and for a single second, her gaze met Karen's. It wasn't angry. It was sad. The kind of sadness that made Karen swallow hard, as though a lump formed in her throat. Is she okay?" Karen whispered. "She will be," I answered. "Because I'm making sure of it." Karen nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. "I didn't know. I didn't think." "You never thought," another neighbor said. "You only reacted." Daniels placed a gentle but firm hand near her elbow. "Ma'am, it's time." This time, Karen didn't fight. Her arms loosened, her shoulders lowered, and the battle she had been waging with everyone, maybe even with herself, finally ended. As she walked toward the patrol car, the crowd parted, not harshly, not with cruelty, but with the quiet acceptance of something long overdue. My daughter leaned into me, whispering, "Dad, is she going to jail?" "That depends on the investigation," I said. "But she won't hurt you again." Karen turned her head slightly as she reached the car. "You're all making a mistake," she said, though her voice was small, defeated. "I tried to help this place, and though no one said it out loud, the feeling in the air answered clearly. You could have helped us, but instead, you hurt us." Daniels opened the back door. Karen paused for one last moment as if waiting for someone to speak up for her. No one did. And then she climbed inside, the door closing with a soft but final click. The patrol car pulled away slowly, leaving behind only the fading lights and a street full of people who finally felt safe enough to exhale. For the first time in years, the neighborhood stood united, quiet, relieved, and finally free from the fear they never deserved. And as I lifted my daughter into my arms, I knew something else clearly. Justice had begun. Peace was returning, and this neighborhood would never be the same again. When the patrol cars finally disappeared around the bend of the street, the neighborhood grew quiet again, not with fear, not with tension, but with a calmness that felt new. It was the kind of silence that comes after a long storm, when the air is still heavy but the danger has passed, and everyone can breathe again without flinching. My daughter leaned against me, her small fingers wrapped gently around my hand. She looked tired, not just physically, but emotionally, as if the weight of the whole afternoon had settled into her tiny shoulders. "Dad," she whispered, "is she gone now?" I brushed a strand of hair away from her forehead and nodded. "Yes. She won't be coming near you again." My daughter let out a shaky breath, the kind that only comes when fear has finally loosened its grip. Her shoulders relaxed a little. She looked from me to the neighbors still standing nearby, some with their arms folded, others with relief softening their faces. No one spoke loudly. No one argued. For once, the street wasn't filled with Karen's sharp voice echoing from porch to porch. It felt peaceful. A couple neighbors stepped forward quietly. Mrs. Green was first. She knelt down beside my daughter. "We're so sorry," she said gently. "Karen scared my grandchildren too. You didn't deserve what happened." Another neighbor nodded. "She's yelled at all our kids at some point. I'm glad someone finally stood up to her. And I'm glad you're okay." My daughter gave a tiny nod, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." Seeing her talk to others without fear made a warmth spread through my chest. She had been so shaken. Seeing her slowly come out of that fear meant more than anything. I lifted her carefully into my arms, mindful of her sore forehead, and carried her toward the house. The front door creaked softly as we stepped inside, leaving the murmurs of the neighbors behind us. The cool air of the living room wrapped around us, soothing after the heat outside. I set her gently onto the couch, grabbed a fresh cold cloth, and placed it on her forehead. She held it in place and looked up at me. "Dad, I didn't think anyone would help me." My heart tightened. I sat beside her, letting her lean against my arm. "I will always help you," I said. "No matter what. I'm your dad. That's my job, and I'll never let anyone scare you again." She nodded slowly, her eyelids fluttering from exhaustion. "You came so fast. I thought you were still inside." "I heard everything," I said quietly, "and nothing in the world would keep me from getting to you." Her breathing slowly steadied as she rested her head on my shoulder. The cold cloth slipped a little, but I adjusted it gently, brushing my fingers across her hair in slow, calming circles. Her tears had dried, leaving faint traces on her cheeks. After a few minutes, her voice came out softer than a whisper. "Dad, is Karen really in trouble?" "She is," I answered. "But that's not something you need to worry about. She's going to talk to the officers, and they'll decide what happens next. Will she come back here?" "No," I said firmly. "Not today. Not tomorrow. She won't hurt you again." For the first time since everything happened, my daughter allowed herself to relax completely. Her head settled against my chest, and her breathing deepened. In a few moments, she drifted into sleep, safe, warm, and far away from the chaos she had just lived through. I stayed still, holding her in my arms, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting long golden streaks across our porch, across the street, and across the entire neighborhood. The air felt lighter than it had in months. Without Karen's constant presence, the street seemed to breathe out a long overdue sigh. From the window, I could see neighbors beginning to talk again, not in hushed tones, not in fearful whispers, but with genuine relief. Some shook their heads, others hugged each other, and a few even smiled. The anxiety that had always surrounded Karen had finally loosened its grip. There was still a lot to resolve. There would be meetings, statements, paperwork, but all of that could wait. Right now, the most important thing was the child sleeping safely in my arms. I looked down at her small face, peaceful and calm once again, and I felt something solid settle inside me, a feeling of absolute certainty. Karen made the biggest mistake of her life when she thought she could intimidate a child. She made an even bigger mistake when she scared my child. Because she didn't know the truth until it was far too late, the girl she threatened, The girl she made cry, the girl she hurt, was the daughter of the police chief. And justice had answered swiftly. As the soft glow of evening filled the living room and my daughter slept quietly on my chest, the final pieces of tension left my body. The neighborhood was safe, my home was peaceful, and my daughter was protected. Everything Karen tried to control had slipped from her hands today, and everything she tried to break had survived. Justice came quickly, peace returned gently, and the child she scared most was finally safe again.